Well, hello and welcome to the first of our 2025 Falls Prevention Seminars. Preventing falls is a weighty matter, and we will find out exactly what that means over the next 55 minutes or so. My name is Erin Olson. I am a program specialist with the Idaho Commission on Aging, and I manage the Health Promotion Program. I also founded and coordinate the Falls Prevention Coalition of Idaho. I wanted to welcome you on this beautiful fall day in Idaho, and thank you for making time to learn more about why falls happen, and perhaps as importantly, how we can prevent them. Next slide, please. Now, we have a lot to share, and we hope that you do have a lot of questions because that means you're learning. When you do, please use the chat to ask them. Normally, we use the Q&A, but WebEx is giving us some challenges with that today. So go ahead and put them in the chat. When the time comes, we will make time to answer as many as we can, and our resident support guru, Michelle, will curate the questions and present them to our expert, Dr. Simonson. Next slide. Now, everybody always wants to know where they can get a copy of the slides. The answer, of course, is yes, you can. They are available right now from the content panel. So if you're familiar with WebEx, you can view it by clicking the content panel button, which is on your bottom toolbar. If you don't want to do that now or can't find the option, no worries. All of the resources will be available on our website at www.aging.idaho.gov/falls. And you'll hear that a lot through the seminar. It's always aging.idaho.gov. And in this case, /falls, F-A-L-L-S. Now, I do have to say, timing is everything, and unfortunately, I didn't have control over it, but we are updating our website. So our content has been frozen while they're converting things over. So it may be a couple of days before materials are available, but I will get them posted as soon as I get the okay to do so. Next slide, please. Now, I'm a positive thinker, but I was also a Girl Scout, and I know that we all need to be prepared. We know that anytime we rely on technology, things can happen, a lot of things can happen that are beyond our control. So here's our plan in case such things happen in the next hour. If you are disconnected, just log in again as soon as possible and rejoin us. If we lose our expert, he will log in back in as soon as possible and continue his discussion. Remember that for all of us in our email, there was actually a phone number. So if it's an internet issue or a power issue and you have a cell phone, you can use that phone number to get back in and talk with us for Dr. Simonson or be able to participate in the seminar. Now, if we lose me, nobody will notice that most of the time, but I will again log in as soon as possible. And if not, then I hate to tell you guys, but Michelle and Dr. Simonson, you'll have to continue on without me. Don't worry, it's not going to happen. But if we lose, power or connectivity, we will get back on as soon as possible. Dr. Simonson can continue to talk without me, of course. Now, if an electromagnetic pulse or some other catastrophe hits, we will be forced to postpone the seminar, but we will let you know when it is rescheduled. And of course, it will be recorded so you can review it when that happens. Now, that's our emergency plan, but of course, we always hope that there is no emergency. Next slide, please. As I just mentioned, we will record the seminar, and we are doing that now. We know that sometimes you can't stay for the whole seminar. You want to review it after the fact, and we hope that you actually would also like to share the seminar with all the wonderful things that you learned with people that you know. So we are recording the seminar, so you have access to it after this live presentation. For any attorneys who may care, this is our official notification to everybody that's on the seminar that it is being recorded, and they may be recorded as well. You will receive a link via email when that recording is available. It'll be on our YouTube Falls Prevention channel in a few days, and we will send you an email when that happens. It's http://youtube.com. That's the normal part. And then for us, it's at ICOA. And let me spell that out for you. It's IDAHO, Idaho. Then COA, which stands for Commission on Aging. So at Idaho COA. And that's our handle for all of our social media, so you can follow us when you want or need to. As I said, please also feel free to share that link with anybody who may be interested in learning what Dr. Simonson has to say today. Next slide, please. Okay, topics. You may be wondering what we're going to talk about today. Well, we're going to start with a brief introduction and discussion about falls. This is our primer for people who may not be familiar with falls. For those of you who have participated in seminars in the past, it might be a little bit of review, but I do like to change it up at least a little bit every year, so some things do. Be patient and put up with me for just a few minutes, then we'll get to the star of our show and the main topic. We'll hear about weight-bearing exercise and why it's important. We'll learn a lot about chronic conditions and aging and how they impact our bodies. And then we'll learn what we can do about all of those things to reduce falls and to age well. Finally, we'll take a few questions, time permitting. Next slide, please. So as promised, let's start with a brief overview about falls. Next slide, please. I know if I ask each of you if you know what a fall is, you'd obviously say yes. That's something we're all familiar with, fortunately or unfortunately. Well, that's not a surprise, but if we really thought about it, what really is a fall? I ask this because more than half of older adults who have fallen, even with an injury, don't tell anybody that they fell, their doctor or their families. If asked, they are most likely to deny falling. Now, this isn't simply because they don't understand what a fall is. The reason is that they're worried that if they fall, someone's going to want to limit their independence. Don't do those dangerous activities where you might fall, and possibly even you need to be living in a different living condition, not your own home, which of course is very scary and not what most people want. So we are also often embarrassed when we fall. It's because we did something silly, and we don't like to admit that to other people. So let's just clear the air and fully understand what we consider a fall to be. So what I have here is definitely a kind of a formal definition, somewhat complicated, but it's also a good one. It is unintentionally moving downward, typically rapidly and freely without control, from a higher to a lower level. So there are two things first off. First, it's not something we intend to do. Second, for that short moment, we're not in control of our bodies. Ultimately, we end up in a place that is lower than where we started, and that's kind of just, where was I? Was I standing? And if I'm standing, have I moved to something lower? In other words, we might be standing and walking, and if we fall, we may be leaning against a wall, sitting on a couch, or laying on the floor. Any of these is lower in space than where we started. It's important because we don't need to fall to the floor for it to be a fall, and we certainly don't need and hope we don't have injuries from a fall, but it's more just the uncontrolled movement from a higher to a lower place that we're worried about. Could be caused by a slip or a trip, but if we have any of these things, higher to lower plane, then it's a fall, not just a trip or slip. By the way, it does not include fainting, seizures, or some kind of trauma. Loss of consciousness is not the same as a fall. Because we need to be able to communicate clearly about falls and falling, we need this clear definition. That's what we have in front of us, and now we all know. Next slide, please. All right, so why should we care about falls? Now that we know what a fall is, the question becomes, why do they matter? Why should we care about falls and preventing them? Falls are multifactorial, just means that there are many causes. We can't possibly provide all of those causes here, but here are some of the important outcomes from falls. It's the #1 cause of accidental injury and death in people age 65 plus. It's the #1 cause of traumatic brain injury or TBI across all age groups, so not just older adults. 1 in 3 older adults fall at least once each year, and 1 in 5 of those falls causes a serious injury like a traumatic brain injury or broken bones. Nationally, over 800,000 patients are hospitalized due to a fall. That's a lot of people, close to 1 million. And that statistic is a couple years old, so it probably is closer to 1 million at this point. Here's the shocking one. The average medical cost of a fall in Idaho is more than $37,000, $38,000. And I can attest to that. I had a fall and 3 days in the hospital, and it was definitely more than $38,000 and a little bit of surgery as well. So all of these are important reasons to know why we want to prevent falls. And it's also important to know that falling once doubles your chance of falling again. It starts a cycle. All of these should make us want to reduce the chance of falling for ourselves and for others. Next slide, please. One more slide about falls. These are Idaho-specific statistics. Actually, starting on the right, where do falls occur? Idahoans fall 67% at home, and I think we all know this. A vast majority of falls occur in our homes where we think we're safe, but we do a lot of things in our homes where we trip and slip. 9% are in institutions. Primarily, that means like in a hospital, and there are obviously some extra circumstances there. But also 4.5%, almost 5%, are in public spaces. So we need to focus on keeping our homes safe, but we also need to work to have safe public spaces and buildings, safe sidewalks, for example, so we're not tripping and falling. Interestingly, geography does seem to matter. Idahoans fall more than the national average overall. We have 1 in 3 older adults. The national average is 1 in 4. So that's important. But the fall rate is more than 5% higher in a few of our counties specifically. They include Bannock, Bingham, Bonneville, Elmore, Jerome, Kootenai, Shoshone, and the Twin Falls counties. With this info, we are hopefully ready to learn why weight-bearing exercise is an important part of our falls prevention strategies. Next slide, please. And now the preview is over. If you've been to the movies and you sit through all those previews, and now we get to go on with the show. Next slide, please. It is my true pleasure to introduce you to our expert speaker for today. I met Dr. Shawn Simonson when he did a presentation similar to this at the Osher Institute at Boise State a little over a year ago. His information impressed me so much that I tracked him down and convinced him to share his information with us here today. And I really appreciate him giving us his time. He is a busy professor in the School of Kinesiology at BSU and is just starting the fall semester, which I think, as we all know, is a pretty crazy time for anybody involved in academics. He teaches at both the undergraduate and graduate level, as well as laboratory and performance-oriented. His teaching goal is to make people completely uncomfortable. I love that he says that. They're completely and appropriately uncomfortable as they become lifelong learners. And I love that because that's what we're all doing here ourselves, is being lifelong learners. Dr. Simonson conducts research in a lot of things, includes exercise, novel conditioning programs. He also works with a specific program that he might mention in just a moment. He also does environmental physiology, as well as in the scholarship of teaching. His other passions, if that wasn't enough, include scuba diving, working with his hands. He learns all the time. He is an adult learner that does age-long learning. And if he's not participating in some sort of physical activity, he's probably working on a home project, modifying his car, working his dogs, or reading and writing something. He is a busy, busy man. It is my true pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Shawn Simonson. And Dr. Simonson, please take it away.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate that introduction. And Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens as we get older. And my perspective is going to be that it's a matter of decreasing physical activity that causes a lot of these issues. And then at the end, I'm going to make a few suggestions about how we can counteract this development of some of these issues. So let's go ahead and get on to the next slide, please, Michelle. So we're going to think about how weight-bearing exercise can prevent falls and health conditions that increase fall risk. Let's go on to the next slide. So hypokinesis, or physical inactivity, I like to classify it as a pathology. This is not original to me, but I like the way of thinking about this because we're saying that hypokinesis is abnormally diminished motor activity. And I can't remember who called it this, but it's a poverty of movement. I like the way that sounds. But it also, we tend to have excess caloric intake. And that means that we're consuming more calories than we're burning, which can lead to obesity or weight gain, which I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that you probably already know. Leads to metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, cerebrovascular accidents, which is a fancy word for stroke, hypertension, cancer, and musculoskeletal disorders. These are all pathologies. So these are the pathologies associated with physical inactivity or insufficient movement. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. In addition, chronic sitting, or sitting for long periods of time, is an independent predictor of negative health outcomes. The three major things that it's considered to be a problem with is takes the time away from physical activity, your blood sugar and fat levels go up, and it triggers chronic inflammation. And it's actually not the sitting itself, but it's the lack of physical activity that leads to these three things. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of those as we go along. So next slide, please. So if we sit and we are physically inactive, cortisol goes up. You all heard of cortisol. We call it the stress hormone. Okay? It goes up. If you take walks to break an effort, it actually reduces cortisol. Okay? And it also reduces stress and anxiety. Next slide, please. In addition, if we think about aging, there are a couple of things that accelerate it and decelerate it. Things that accelerate in aging are lack of sleep, sedentary behavior, I've already said, smoking, processed and junk foods, and stress. Things that reduce aging or slow it are exercise, other activities every day, adequate, good, and quality sleep, appropriate nutrition, and relaxation techniques. And where this comes in is that if we're not doing those things and we're being sedentary, we're not sleeping well, we're not eating well, it actually leads to senescence. And senescence is the deterioration with age. And it happens at the cellular level. Okay, so we get mitochondrial dysfunction. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the mitochondria. You've probably heard of them. They're the powerhouse of the cell. They provide energy for the cell to run. And so if those aren't working, we're not energizing or providing enough energy to do our activities or even heal, or what else may be going on. We have epigenetic alterations, and that's to your genes. And that's alterations to your gene expression. Okay? We lose protein. Proteostasis is ability to maintain protein. And that the obvious thing is we're going to lose protein in muscle, but we can also lose the proteins that make up our enzymes, the proteins that carry oxygen in our blood, hemoglobin, those types of things. And then one that people don't really understand but is huge, is telomere attrition. And your telomeres are they're the ends of your chromosomes, and they protect your chromosomes from breaking down. And one of the things that they do to determine your biological age, if they look at your DNA, is how long are these telomeres at the end of your DNA strands. If they're getting shorter and shorter, we're not protecting the DNA from damage. Okay. So that, and then we also get genomic instability. And so our DNA is breaking down because of those telomeres. So we're having our cells slow down and die. That leads to immunosenescence, which reduces our ability to fight infection and heal, and paracrine senescence, which is a reduction in endocrine or hormone activity. So there's some big reasons to keep physically active. So let's go to the next slide. So what happens that causes this? Well, one of the big things is oxidation. And you can think of this as rust. And what's happening is that molecules are losing electrons. Another way of thinking it is they're gaining oxygen, which is where that oxidation came from, or loss of hydrogen. Think of fruit that browns once you cut it. That same thing is happening to your cells, or to the molecules within your cells, if we're not treating that or preventing it. Mitochondrial dysfunction. I mentioned this before. This is the energy molecule ATP for all cellular functions. Mitochondria make ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, which most people don't even know or care about. But ATP is the energy molecule that everything has to be converted into before your body can use it as energy. Carbohydrates, fats, and some proteins are converted to ATP in the mitochondria for energy. So if we don't do that very well, it increases cardiovascular disease, it increases muscle loss, it decreases our ability for our immune system to respond. And then radiation. Well, what's radiation? Well, we think of radiation as energy released from molecules. For example, an X-ray. But the sun also hits us with radiation. Radon, which is a common radiation that comes up through the ground. It can be an issue in homes, and it is an issue in Idaho, so have a radon check in your home. And those are the sources of radiation. It damages the cells and impairs function. And examples of this would be cancer, or another one that almost all of us eventually deal with is cataracts, okay, the clouding of the lens of your eye. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. We also have mutations, changes in your genetic code. This can be radiation. It can also be diet. We're showing more and more that those ultra-processed foods actually act at a genetic level and change our chromosomes. Hypokinesis, which was that lack of physical activity. Pollution. Not just air pollution, but the plastics. That's a big one now. We're seeing that microplastics change our genes. Okay. And again, cancer and cataracts are good examples of this. There's another process called glycation. And this, if you've been exposed to diabetes, as far as your doctors talk to you about it, or you have it, or you've worked with people who have diabetes, you've heard of the hemoglobin A1C. And what that is that sugar is attaching to hemoglobin and it's impairing the function. This process is called glycation. But the thing is it doesn't just happen to hemoglobin, it happens to other proteins as well. And then I mentioned this chronic inflammation. And inflammation is good. It is a process by which your body activates the immune system and initiates healing and repair. The problem is that if it's chronic, then we're actually start degrading healthy tissue. And that can lead to cardiovascular disease and stroke. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, please. So those are the senescence. It's this lack of physical activity, all these other things that we experience, reducing cell function. How does this manifest? Well, our muscular strength decreases. And muscular strength is the ability of a muscle to exert a maximal force. Just think of this as pushing on something one time as hard as you can. And over the age of 65, we show muscle strength declines by 1 to 2% per year. Part of this is due to sarcopenia. And sarcopenia is a loss of skeletal muscle mass in that our muscle fibers are getting fewer and smaller. And that plays a big role in strength declines. But it also is not due to just physical activity, but neurological changes, hormonal changes, nutrition changes, immune changes. Because when we exercise, the immune system has to help us recover from that exercise. And as we get older, if our immune system isn't functioning optimally, we're not recovering as well. And I bet many of you have noticed that when you get sick or injured or do something that you're not used to, it seems like it takes you longer to recover. Okay. That's part of your immune system response. But most of the sarcopenia and most of the muscular strength decreases are due to being less active. And I've got a figure here in the bottom that shows the sedentary leisure time behavior among adults by sex and age. And this is a little bit older, but I hate to tell you, the picture is actually worse than this one from 1997. But the lack of physical leisure time activity goes up. And especially in women, as they get older, we reduce our physical activity. Okay? So let's go to the next slide. Now, we said that muscular strength decreases by 1 to 2% per year over the age of 65. However, power loss is even greater. And what's the difference between strength and power? So strength doesn't depend on time. It's your ability to exert force, and it could be really slow. Okay? But power takes time into consideration, and it's how fast you can exert your force. Okay? So it's a product of strength and velocity. And that actually declines 3 to 4% per year. Okay, so that's a greater decline. Now let's go to the next slide. Here's one that everybody thinks about: bone. And that's atrophy and osteoporosis. Osteoporosis gets a lot of talk, a lot of coverage. And I think, one, because we see the consequences of it more easily than we do other things. But osteoporosis is actually bone atrophy, and it's most often associated with elderly women, and it does compromise their daily activity. It mostly affects trabecular bone, which is found at the epiphysis and the metaphysis, which are the ends of the bone. Okay, it's usually not in the shaft of the bone. It's at the joint, close to where the joint is, but also where most of the stress is on the bone. We lose about 0.5% to 1% of bone mass per year after our late 20s for females and mid-30s for males. And it accelerates to 6.5% per year after menopause. And by age 70, men catch up and have accelerated loss as well. So osteoporosis was considered a female elderly women problem, but as men are getting older and reducing their physical activity, we're seeing more men developing osteoporosis as well. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So this figure here shows you peak bone mass acquisition. And really what I want to show you is that for all of us that are on this call, it's too late to increase our bone mass significantly. Because that actually happens during adolescence. And in our early 20s to 30s is when we achieve our peak bone mass. As I mentioned, it starts falling off after that. But what I want to point out on these graphs is that people who are active at all ages have a greater bone mass than those who are inactive. Okay. So, and if you increase physical activity, you're going to increase your bone mass. Okay. Or as we get older, delay or slow the loss of bone mass. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is a graph that just shows you relative bone mineral density of individuals participating in lifetime physical activity. Bone is like any other organ or tissue in the body. It responds to stress. So the more we appropriately stress it, the healthier it's going to be. Now you'll look at this figure and you'll notice that being sedentary it's kind of in the middle, and it has the lowest bone mass. But you'll also see that swimming, water aerobics, cycling, climbing are pretty close to being sedentary. And the reason is those are not weight-bearing exercises. They don't stress the bone a lot. I mean, one of the great things about swimming is it takes your weight off, right? I swim a lot. As was mentioned, I love to scuba dive. And one of my least favorite things about it is getting out of the water, okay? Because suddenly gravity is back. But because of that, we're not stressing the bones as well. So what should we do to increase bone mineral density? Well, walking is a great thing. Running if you can, weightlifting, which we can all do, and then gymnastics and bodybuilding are on there, as well as aerobics. Things that load the bone. Okay. Next slide, please. The other thing that we should be thinking about, and a lot of you have probably heard about this as DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Okay. They tell you when you go on an airplane or you're sitting for a long period of time, we tell a lot of older adults use compression socks or stockings, okay? Or move your feet. Why? Because when our heart beats, it pushes the blood through the arteries. When we get to the capillaries, that heart is no longer pushing the blood through because we want the pressure to be very low. So how do we get from a very low pressure so our blood pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury, and you've probably heard 120/80 is our target. But in the capillaries, that blood pressure is 5 millimeters of mercury, 10 millimeters of mercury. But how do we get it back to the heart? Well, we get it back to the heart using a muscle pump. And so each time a muscle contracts, it squeezes the veins and it pushes blood back to the heart. It also moves your lymph through the lymphatic system. Lymph nodes, when the doctor texts your lymph nodes under your neck, and sometimes they'll check them in your arm. Anywhere you have a joint, you have lymph nodes. Well, they're connected by lymphatics, which parallel your blood vessels. And it's important because that's how your immune system travels and communicates with it. And so we need that muscle pump to move blood and lymph through the system. Physical activity, again, provides that muscle pump. One way that you may notice this is if you're susceptible to it, if you sit for a long period of time, or by the end of the day, your feet are swelling, that's pooling of the fluids because you haven't had enough muscle pump to push the fluids back up to your heart. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Myokines. Myokines are chemical messengers that come from muscle, okay? And they modulate inflammation. They increase inflammation, but they also decrease inflammation. Okay? Physical activity actually reduces inflammation by producing anti-inflammatory myokines. Okay? So, and as we increase physical activity, we actually produce more anti-inflammatory myokines and reduce our inflammatory response in a healthy way. Okay? And one way to think about this is like your body making Advil or ibuprofen or Aleve on its own, because that's what those are. Those are anti-inflammatories, but your body's making its own version to reduce inflammation. And remember, yes, physical activity might cause a little bit of inflammation. I mean, that's part of what we want to do, actually. But we're trying to reduce that chronic inflammation, and physical activity can help do that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I mentioned the telomeres, the ends of the chromosomes. And this is just a fancy slide showing you that as we are active, we actually activate cellular machinery that builds and protects the telomeres. Okay? If we are sedentary, we actually activate systems that shorten the telomeres. And remember, the telomeres are important because they protect the chromosomes from damage. So if we have longer, healthier telomeres, we're protecting our chromosomes from that radiation that I mentioned, from pollution, those types of things. Okay. So another benefit of physical activity is protecting our chromosomes. All right, let's go on to the next one. Why should we exercise? Well, I don't know about you folks, but when I'm physically active, I think better. Okay? And actually, my students have more than once said, Dr. S, will you quit going for runs? Because when I run, I think about my class, and I come up with these great questions to ask my students. And they find them challenging, and they say, well, how'd you think about this? I said, well, when I was out running, it came to me. I said, well, you don't need to run so much, because you come up with these questions that are hard. Okay? But it improves our ability to think. It also reduces anxiety because we're controlling that cortisol, we're increasing our relaxation, we're dilating blood vessels. That all helps reduce anxiety. And it increases a feeling of well-being. Regular physical activity helps us control our weight, reduces cardiovascular disease, delays type 2 diabetes, or if we have diabetes, it helps us manage it. It enhances bone and muscle mass. And here it is, prevents falls and prolongs life. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So aerobic activity. You've all heard of this, the term that many exercise physiologists don't like, but is the common term, is cardio. Okay, cardio is aerobic activity. It's getting you breathing harder and your heart beating faster. We want to have moderate or vigorous intensity. Every little bit helps. Okay? I'm going to give you some some guidelines in a moment. Muscle strengthening. You want to use all of your major muscle groups, which are your legs, hips, back, chest, abdominals, shoulders, and arms. The recommendations from the Centers for Disease Control and several other agencies actually is at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity every week. Okay? Now, 150 minutes, that's less than half an hour a day, right? Or we could do 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity a week and get the same benefit. So what that tells you is the greater intensity, the more benefit you're getting. We should do muscle strengthening activities at least 2 days a week. I'm going to give you more information about that. And as we get older, we should do things that improve our balance. And the last point on there is that we should vary it. Variety causes different types of adaptations, and it helps us improve in different ways. Okay? And that variety could be riding a bike versus walking the dog, but it could also be where you choose to walk. It could be go different directions on different surfaces, those types of things. because you get a different response. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So, of course, before you start exercising, just talk to your doctor, but also get the support of your friends and family. I run a program called Fitness for Life, and it's an older adult strength training program at Boise State. And what it really is a bunch of older adults coming and meeting once a day, 5 days a week, to strength train together. But almost every one of them would tell you it's the support and the social interaction that plays the greatest role. Okay. And when I go in there, it is always loud because they are talking and having fun, but they're training together. They're supporting each other. Always start slow, add time, or do it more frequently, or make it more intense as you progress. Now, something that I do is I always train in the morning because that's when I'm energetic. So schedule your physical activity for times of the day or week when you're most energetic. So I train myself in the morning because I'm a morning person. Make physical activity part of your schedule. I block out times in my schedule for me to train. My gym time is 10 a.m. to 11:30, Monday through Friday. And I don't schedule meetings. I don't schedule students. I don't schedule classes during those times so that I can make sure I get to the gym. Walk instead of drive. If you can, walk. Or in Boise and in some of our communities, I know some of our communities we don't, but some of our communities we have great walking spaces like the Greenbelt in the Treasure Valley. I actually ride my bike to work on the Greenbelt, and it's less traffic and takes me about the same amount of time as driving. Okay, but find ways to increase physical activity. And as I mentioned, the Greenbelt, support neighborhood improvements to make it easier to walk or bike. Because your community is going to do those things, hopefully, if you ask. And if enough of you ask, they will eventually do that for you. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. So bone growth. We already talked about this a little bit. How do we improve bone growth or reduce our risk for osteoporosis? Lifelong physical activity is the number one thing. Yes, diet plays a role, but weight-bearing activity, resistance exercise, general activity is the best method. Now, why do we hear, well, you need to increase your calcium? We've got these fancy new medications, because those are easier, but they're not as effective as increasing physical activity. Now, it may be postmenopausal hormonal replacement or some of those medications are appropriate, but that's a conversation you should have with your doctor. But the first line defense is physical activity. Okay, next slide, please. So the optimum loading to stimulate bone building is 4.2 times your body weight. Okay, so how do we get that? Well, a brisk walk, our bones feel 1 to 2 times our body weight each time our foot hits the ground. Okay, running or jogging, it's about 3 times. Jumping or strength training, now we're at that 4 times our body weight. Okay, and this graphic shows you at the bottom, swimming, there's no body weight, and that's why we don't get that increase in bone growth or slowing in bone loss. Okay, next slide, please. One other thing I want to bring up, and this is something new that we've actually learned since I gave the talk that Aaron referred to earlier, is eccentric contractions and training. There are 3 types of muscle contractions. Isometric muscle contractions is the muscle staying the same length while contracting. This is like the figure here is pushing against the wall. The wall is not going to move, okay? But you're exerting force. Okay, that's an isometric contraction. The muscle is not changing length. A concentric contraction is a muscle shortens while contracting. Okay, so this would be going upstairs. The muscle is getting shorter as you're going through the motion. eccentric contractions, the muscles lengthening while contracting. And this is while you're sitting down. When you slowly lower yourself into a chair, it's eccentric muscle contraction that's controlling that motion down. Okay? What we've recently discovered is that older adults lose eccentric strength faster than they lose concentric and isometric strength. Why is that important? Well, think about what Erin was talking about earlier, what a fall is. It's this unexpected change in body position. Well, when you trip or you start to fall, if we watch athletes or young people, what happens is they quickly put a foot out to catch themselves. And it's the eccentric contraction when they put that foot down that stops them from falling. Okay. So if we lose that eccentric strength, it reduces your ability to control your body position when you have a perturbation, when the ground is uneven or you trip over something. You lose some of that ability to stop the fall. Okay. So we need to make sure we're including eccentric contractions in our training. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So, power training. This is strength training. It means some speed training. Combination training is both strength and speed training. And plyometrics. Think of plyometrics. The easiest way to do plyometrics, to explain it, is skipping. Because you've got a rapid change in position that you're responding to. Jumping rope is plyometrics. Okay? Anything where you're rapidly changing direction and responding. Okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. So this slide is going to show you something that I really want you to pay attention to. And that is traditional strength training, traditional weight training with heavier weight plays a greater role in increasing cross-sectional area, rate of force development, which is that speed, okay, and bone density. Now, why do I bring this up and why do I ask you to pay attention to it? And actually, I had one of our Fitness for Life participants ask me about this yesterday. For a lot of times for older adults, we say you should be doing a lot of repetitions when you're training. No, you should be doing a few repetitions, working as hard as you can. Okay, so no more than 15 repetitions. If you can lift a weight more than 15 times, it's too light. Increase the weight when you're training. We should be doing things. It's okay to lift something that you can only lift 2 or 3 times before you have to put it down. So higher intensity, shorter duration when we're in the weight room or doing a resistance training. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, please. Olympic weightlifting. If you watch the Olympics, it's the clean and jerk and the snatch. And the 3 figures on the far right show folks doing Olympic weightlifting. It's never too late to do Olympic weightlifting. One of my previous jobs, I was a personal trainer, and I started with a woman age 65 after she retired, and eventually she was competing in the Senior Olympics in Olympic weightlifting and set an age group and weight record. Okay? The advantage to Olympic weightlifting is its weight bearing. It requires balance, proprioception, which is your ability to control your body and position, and it has the eccentric load. Okay? Plyometrics. I've got a woman in the middle there jumping rope. That's a plyometric activity. A compound set, what that means is doing 2 movements for the same muscle group. Okay? So it could be doing a squat movement and a lunge movement, which are on the handout that we've included. Okay? So lots of options of what we can do here. Let's do the next slide, please. Okay, so when we stop moving, we gain weight, our muscles get weaker, our bone mineral density decreases, we lose balance and postural stability, our blood pressure goes up, our blood sugar is compromised, arteries and veins stiffen, chromosomes get shorter, immune function decreases, cell damage increases, and cognitive function decreases. So why would we stop moving? All right, next slide. So I've got a quote here from, actually, I've got a couple of quotes from Thoreau. And this is from an essay he wrote called Walking in 1862. I think that I cannot preserve my health and spirits unless I spend 4 hours a day at least, and it is commonly more than that, sauntering through the woods and over the hills and fields, absolutely free from all worldly engagements. Next slide, please. The walking of which I speak has nothing in it akin to taking exercise, as it is called, as the sick take medicine at stated hours, as the swinging of dumbbells or chairs, but is itself the enterprise and adventure of the day. If you would get exercise, go in search of the springs of life. Next slide, please. So I hope I've given you a little bit of a rationale for why we should be continuing to be physically active. There is a handout today, and I'm not going to spend any time on it, but it shows you physical activities that we might consider doing to help with bone mass, to help with muscle strength. And they're all lower body things to help with preventing falls. If you have questions for me, we've got a few minutes. It actually worked out just right to take some questions. But I also have my email on there so that you can reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer your questions via email as well. So let's open it up to questions at this time.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Simonson. I thought I knew what you were going to talk about, and you threw out about 100,000 new things that I've learned. So thank you for that. And, you know, normally at this point, I kind of summarize what was said, but there's just too much. Fortunately, we do have the recording, and you have a copy of the slides, so you can all refer back to all of the things that he said. I have like 20 of them that apply to me. And I just want to say that after I first heard you speak, one thing I've done is doing at least 30 minutes of walking a day. And sometimes that's laps around my house, sometimes on the hard tile, sometimes on the carpet, moving in different directions, you know, if it's a bad day. But I've been doing that, and it hopefully fits in with everything else you've talked about. So yes, let's ask Michelle. Michelle, did we have any questions in the chat? And for those of you that are with us, if you do have a question, if you can please put it in the chat, then we can have Dr. Simonson answer it for you.
There's currently no questions in the chat.
No questions in the chat. Well, we'll give guys just a minute to figure out. I know that there's a lot of information to digest. One thing that I know is that I learned that I was calling something the wrong thing. I was calling telomeres, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, as endomeres. Don't ask me where, is endomeres a real word, or did I just make that up?
Yeah. I am not familiar with that as a word.
Okay, then I made it up from when I first heard you. I got the mirror part right, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's what impressed me so much is, and like we all know this, that sleep, nutrition, hydration, lack of stress, physical activity helps us with everything. It's like this web of well-being. And so we don't need to be talking specifically about falls. We just need to know that if we get up, which was hard for me to do with my job, and move every day and do the other things that Dr. Simonson talked about, nothing but good will happen in so many ways you can't believe it. And I love that we now have some quotes from Thoreau to give us guidance, if you will.
Yeah. It looks like we do have some questions.
Okay,
from the
good,
chat.
good. Then I can stop talking.
All right. The first question we have is that, is the fitness program at BSU that was mentioned available to the public?
It is. It's called Fitness for Life. We meet Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. in the weight room that we use for teaching. It's on campus, and there is a small fee associated with it because I have to be able to pay my student workers. And also we do purchase equipment or repair equipment that we use as well. But if you send me an email, and I believe that I do not have that slide included here, but if you send me an email at that email address that's on the screen right now, I will send you more information about Fitness for Life. And what we do is we require a physician's clearance. We require a health history and an informed consent, and then we get you started. And included is parking on campus. So I know that that's an issue. But yes, we include parking on campus, and then we help you put together a program and help you modify it as you progress. So yeah, send me an email and I will send you the particulars about Fitness for Life.
And you do all have the handout that has his email address at the very top, and it is also on those slides that we gave you. And if not, then you can just contact me and I will get you his email address.
Right. The next question we have is, how do you recommend an older person get started with weight training?
So there are going to be a lot of personal trainers who don't like what I'm about to say, because you can start in your home. And really, it's the advantage to a personal trainer is they can teach you technique and variety. Okay. But in your home, an easy thing, get a milk jug or a water jug. A gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. If you can't lift 8 pounds, put less water in it. Make sure the lid is secure and start lifting that object. When I was first started, when I was in my first year of high school, freshman in high school, I had some knee problems, and my doctor said, I want you to sit on the edge of your bed, get your mom's biggest purse, put some books in that purse, and work on your knee, your leg strength. Okay. So we don't need fancy stuff. I would say start with some of the exercises I've indicated. Find a class like our Fitness for Life or a senior center in your community. If you do have a gym membership, a personal trainer. But there are there are personal trainers online. There's a lot of good stuff online. And if you want some specific recommendations about who to contact or what resources are going online, again, send me an email and I'll hook you up. But really, it's just start picking up things that are heavy and putting them back down. And do different motions. The woman that I told you about that started Olympic lifting, the reason she came to me when I was a personal trainer is that she traveled a lot and she couldn't get her carry-on in the overhead bin. And so we just started by picking things up off the floor and up to shoulder height. And then we progressed to lifting them above your shoulder. And that is the clean and jerk in Olympic weightlifting. And that's why we incorporated that. But just start picking things up that are heavy. And if you want more detail, the internet's a great source. But again, send me an email and I'll give you some specifics.
And the key to all of this is just move, first of all. Some of us don't move nearly enough. And then, of course, the weight-bearing exercise, which is kind of the focus, but really there were a lot of things that we learned here. Just as a reminder, we do have an upcoming seminar called Simple Steps that is a shortened version of the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare's Fit and Fall Proof program. And all of that is designed to be done either standing or sitting. We demonstrate it both ways, and things that you can do at home. And I think that's, I know my mom was one that always said she will never go to a gym, and she never has. Well, that's okay because you don't have to. So take a look at that, and the handout has those exercises as well. Michelle, how many more questions do we have?
We don't have any more questions. We do have a comment from Brooke, who was the one that did ask about the BSU fitness program. And she said she is a professional care manager and would love to share this information with her clients.
Excellent. That's exactly what we want you guys to do. Go forth and share it and get everybody moving. So we are out of time. We're right at the top of the hour. Brooke, we're going to kind of skip through a few of the slides. The first is that we do have a link where you can go online, answer 13 very simple questions, and it will give you a falls risk rating. So you know, are you at risk of falling? And then it also will provide you a bunch of resources via email. I do want to remind all of you that the Commission on Aging does our work through area agencies on aging. There are 6 in the state, and they all can provide you with additional resources, not only about falls prevention, but also programs like congregate meals, home delivered meals, medication, transportation, respite services, and the whole thing. So please contact your local area agency on aging if you want assistance with anything like that. And lastly, but not leastly, if that's a word, I would like to thank all of you for making time to attend today. I know everybody's busy and it's not always a good time, but you are here, so thank you for that. I definitely want to thank Dr. Simonson for making time in his busy schedule. And unfortunately, I think you're a good presenter and I love this information, so I'm probably going to call on you again sometime in the future. And lastly, thank you to Michelle, who was behind the scenes running stuff, making sure we had slides. The recording will be made available to you in a few days or a week. And with that, I would just like to thank everybody for being here. And what I like to say is, we hope you have a falls-free kind of day. And our tagline is, let's stay falls-free in ID. So thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.